A small town rocked by a scandal straight out of a horror dystopian thriller. A trusted teacher celebrated for his innovative work in cybersecurity is now accused of using AI, artificial intelligence, to create fake sexual videos of students. This isn't science fiction. This is allegedly happening right now in Corinth, Mississippi. How did this happen? What does it mean for the future of crime and technology? And how do we stop it? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We're now going to touch upon something that I have been concerned about for a while, the interplay between AI and crime. And in the small town of Corinth, Mississippi, this has taken on a different level. I mean, what I'm about to get into, kind of sounds like a dystopian thriller, although it's disgusting and also horrible and horrifying at the same time. But you have Wilson Frederick Jones, a 30-year-old former teacher at Corinth Middle School, and he has been arrested and charged with using artificial intelligence, AI, to create fake pornographic videos of students. Yeah, this is now a real thing. This is happening. Yes, these are allegations, but the interplay between AI and crime is happening. So all of this apparently began in November of last year when, according to reporting from Action News 5, Corinth School District administrators received an alert about illicit content on Jones' school-issued computer. You see, the district used a software to scan its devices for any kind of inappropriate material, and the system flagged something alarming. Now, the arrest has left the Corinth community stunned. I'll also tell you, I think it's left anybody who's read this story pretty stunned. Now, parents of the affected students, they were immediately notified. The school district has been cooperating fully with law enforcement. The district said in an official statement, quote, "The Corinth School District internet filtering system alerted district administration of inappropriate activity on a teacher computer. The district investigated the complaint, took action, and reported the matter as required to the Mississippi Department of Education Office of Educator Misconduct. Since this relates to the employment of a former school district employee and is subject to a current law enforcement investigation, the district cannot offer any additional comment at this time. The district has cooperated and will continue to cooperate with any law enforcement request for assistance." So, according to an FBI affidavit, the content in question, what we're talking about, I want you to brace yourself for this, was allegedly videos depicting students engaged in sexually explicit acts or content that was all AI generated. And the ages of these children featured in the videos range from 14 to 16, and their images were allegedly sourced from social media. Now, according to an affidavit reviewed by WLBT, when confronted, Jones allegedly admitted to using AI to generate videos, but claimed the content wasn't sexual. Now, despite his denial, the school district launched an internal investigation. He resigned on November 21st. This was just 2 days after the initial alert. And before I go any further into this, I got to bring on special guest to help me break all this down. Mike King, retired police commander and host of Profiling Evil. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. I have to imagine that in your career, when you heard AI, you had to imagine it was only a matter of time before this was going to enter into the criminal space and being used by either potential perpetrators or alleged perpetrators or convicted convicts of committing crimes, right?
Boy, you're not kidding, Jesse. And thanks for letting me join you today on this one, because it is really troubling what the future could hold if there aren't some really tough laws put into place and acted upon. And I think we're seeing that happen in this particular case. But who would have ever thunk that we would have been in a position like this, where someone could take a photograph from the web or a photograph from anywhere, frankly, and turn it into an animated video that looks real? And we've seen some of this with some of the political figures recently during the election process, where we saw that happening. But now imagine the disgusting nature of doing that with sexual content and involving children.
And unfortunately, it's going to get better and better in the sense that it's going to get so real you won't be able to tell the difference. And I'm concerned, will there be software to actually detect what's going to happen? Separate issue. But I guess, how do you police this, right? In the sense, if you're talking about sex crimes, you can have victims who've come forward, say what happened to them. There's proof that photos were taken, text messages were exchanged. But if you are creating original content for material that's already in the public space, If it wasn't for this, Bark app that the school used, is there any way to be able to detect this and police it?
No, not that I'm aware of at this point, Jesse. And it kind of gets into that idea of, do you try to guess or second guess what people are going to do, have a minority report, so to speak, which we don't want to get to that point. So we have to be able to come up with some front end legislation that prevents that demands that anything that's generated has certain tagging in it, whether it's in the metadata or in the actual imagery that we're seeing, that says this is phony, this is not real. And I think there has to be just some incredibly heavy duty sanctions placed on people that take somebody else's identity and create something like this.
What motivates somebody to do this, if he really did do this, if the allegations are true, to create AI-generated explicit content involving his students? What would motivate somebody to do something like this?
So you're hitting on the thing that really troubles me as someone who spent a career looking at criminal behavior. And, we have those traditional forms of evidence that you and I talk about on your show all the time. But this idea that behavioral evidence really teaches us and kind of nets it and brings it all together. I have to start thinking immediately about what's the motivation behind it. Is this a predatory fantasy that is starting to evolve and pretty soon not be enough? And so it has to be acted out in reality with children. And so I want to know more about what has he got in his other digital library? What kinds of things is he focusing on? Because it's really that fantasy where the crime begins, isn't it? And it takes us to that juncture that we talk about so often, about the difference between deviant behavior, those goofy thoughts that people have and allegedly in this situation have, and the step over the bridge into criminal behavior.
Do you think his background as a teacher plays a role in his ability to allegedly manipulate and exploit his students' images? I mean, that idea, that role is unfortunately something we've talked a lot about here on Sidebar in recent cases.
My wife is a retired educator, and one thing that she didn't do during her course of educating is that she never got involved in getting on the students' Facebook pages or their Instagram pages or other things. She kept that professional line very clear between the teacher and the student. And that worries me when I see those kinds of things happening, because it opens the doors for access. But getting access to social media imagery is so darn simple nowadays that someone has really no expectation of privacy when they go into these areas. And I guess that's what puts some responsibility on us as guardians, on the parents of children, to come up with things that continue to remind them of the pitfalls that are associated with this dangerous world. And they probably understand the technology better than any of us understand it, but do they have the wisdom to operate within that technology world?
What does this investigation look like? The one now that's happening in Corinth, where you have this AI potentially being used. What does an investigation by law enforcement look like?
So we can theorize that when law enforcement became aware of it, they then used that to draft up a subpoena and get a search warrant of that physical computer. And also, I assume they've gone in and gotten his other personal digital footprint, so they're able to go in and start looking at that to determine, how did he in fact satisfy the elements of that crime? What did he do to manufacture that video, or that series of 3 videos, I think it was? How did he first gain that imagery? Was it given through here's my photo, or was he going in and scraping it off of the web and one of the sites that the children were visiting and putting their pictures on? Then how does he manufacture it? Then how does he store it? And that creates multiple problems for him. One that led to his termination at the school for a violation there. And now potentially, if he's found guilty, the violation of actually producing the document, storing the document, using the web or other means to transfer that document. And then what happens downstream with it, if they're able to prove what the end purpose of that was. Is he going to distribute that and further exploit the child? And so hopefully, and I think we're fortunate in this particular case that the police department was smart enough to say, hey, this is a DOJ issue, not a local policing issue, because they're going to move a whole lot quicker. We're going to see some pretty swift action, and that's going to require some pretty heavy duty research, a lot of investigation, a ton of subpoenas, and then they're going to be able to put on a case, I think, that will be pretty compelling.
Because now he's facing federal charges, and we're going to talk about that. By the way, something I wanted to ask you about is the timeline here. So some months go by as there's this internal investigation. It progresses by the school. And then we get to January, where according to Fox 13, someone apparently filed a complaint against Jones with the Mississippi Department of Education's Office of Educator Misconduct, accusing him of violating the state's Educator Code of Ethics. And then it appears from there, the complaint led to further investigation. But then you go to February. So remember, all this happened in November. Now you go to February. The Mississippi Department of Education forwarded the case to the Corinth Police Department. And according to local paper Dark Horse Press, Corinth Police Detective Captain Heather Russell received an email from the Mississippi Department of Education Misconduct Office regarding the complaint, and Corinth Chief of Police Landon Tucker then met with the school district superintendent, Edward Childress, to discuss the allegations. And apparently that same day, a subpoena was requested to seize evidence from Jones' home. And on March 3rd, the police and the FBI served the subpoena, retrieved a laptop, a thumb drive, a case file compiled by the school district during its internal investigation, and the evidence is what we seem to be, which arguably seems to be quite damning. Now, authorities apparently discovered multiple AI-generated videos depicting students in sexually exploitive situations. Corinth Police Chief Landon Tucker emphasized, quote, "These images were AI-generated. At no time did these victims willingly produce any images or know that their pictures were being manipulated in such a way." And yesterday, federal authorities arrested Jones. He's been charged with production of a morphed image of child pornography and possession of a morphed image of child pornography. So federal charges, which, by the way, is interesting because it's about altering images of children to make it appear that they are engaging in sexual activity. And if you read about this, there's actually a question at one point in the courts whether or not this was protected speech under the First Amendment. Courts have generally said, no, this is not protected speech, although I don't believe the issue actually made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, so we'll see if anything like that makes its way. But during his initial hearing in federal court, a magistrate judge ordered Jones to be held without bail until a detention hearing, which is scheduled, we believe, for tomorrow. Mike, my first question is the timeline. If this happened in November, that the school district got word that there was inappropriate content on his school device, why did it take so long for police to get involved? Why did it take so long for the FBI to get involved? I mean, shouldn't they have been contacted immediately?
Jesse, I think like you and probably all of your viewers, this is really troubling that this 4 months roughly period of time passes between the discovery and the actual charging. Now, because it sounds like from a month, February through March, that's when the real police work was done to build this case and make an arrest on this thing. And so what I find so darn troubling in this particular instance is the fact that, yes, number one, that they approach him. He reportedly, by all news reports, admits to generating the imagery, says, hey, it wasn't sexual. Well, you can call, the stripes on a tiger a lot of things, I guess, but they're still stripes. And then they terminate him from his employment, and then things go quiet. Now, I don't know at which point the family was actually notified of each of these children. I suspect that once they knew, that's what led to maybe the allegations or the charges back to the school board to say, do something. But it just seems really egregious to me that much time would pass, regardless of whether the school board is trying to do a little damage control, maybe hoping it would go away, or maybe they're just trying to figure out how and when to be transparent about it. But the timing seems really bad when you think about the fact that a social worker that hears about sexual abuse. A school teacher that hears about sexual abuse isn't given a window of time to report like that. They're told to go immediately and report that kind of abuse to local authorities, who then get in and make the determination and try to ensure that that child's safe. And so that's really troubling to me. Once it lands on the chief's desk, it sounds to me like, and it appears like, this thing picks up steam and moves quickly to the feds, who quickly then put together an affidavit and apply charges.
Do you anticipate, what do you anticipate could be the potential struggles for law enforcement, or the obstacles for law enforcement to police this kind of conduct, to find out about this kind of conduct, to make sure things like this don't happen in the future? Because one of the things I was thinking about, and I don't know this for sure, is the time that he hadn't been arrested, how easy it is to generate more content using AI programs. I'm not entirely sure. But you tell me what might be some of the obstacles for law enforcement, maybe even schools, enabled to police this kind of conduct.
The things that really trouble me in this particular one, Jesse, around the evidence, number one is the amount of time that passes, and can they truly put together a bulletproof case of a chain of custody on that evidence from the time the school board takes a control of that laptop. And they say that they lock it down and that they take control of it, but that's not the same as it sitting in an evidence locker in a Department of Justice forensic lab being analyzed. There is a month or two where that thing is sitting with really an evidence chain of custody issue, in my opinion. So that's the first thing I worried about immediately after this is can they prove that it really was his, and that it was his through the entire thing? I suspect that they can. But then it's them putting together the case in a way that makes sense to a jury. And keep in mind, most of the juries aren't going to have the sophistication of what technology can do in the area of AI. Most technologists are trying to figure out what the technology of AI is really capable of. So to convince a jury that there is somehow some really culpable kinds of moves along the way to satisfy the elements of this particular statute might be challenging. Although I think just the mere possession of those things, that jump drive, if he did in fact take that jump drive and copy it and take it home, or made that keystroke when he said, "Save this on my school computer," those things are going to be pretty darn compelling.
Well, his alleged admission about using AI that didn't create anything sexual in nature, again, I'm curious the way that might work, because there's a difference between classic examples of photographing a minor or engaging in sexual contact with a minor, or images or videos where it's clear what it is. But if it's AI generated, is there a way to deny this? Is there a way to say it's not what it purports to be?
Well, I think that's going to be the emotion of the jury, isn't it? I mean, if you put that in front of the jury and they feel like, holy cow, these children are doing things sexual in nature, then any other argument's going to be pretty difficult to get over. And if they can supplant that with other kinds of things that support what he fantasizes about or what he was attracted to, is he downloading child pornography in other locations? Those are going to be the things that really knit this thing together. And it may end up being somewhat circumstantial in nature that really ties this case together, not just these pieces of physical or forensic evidence.
Now, here's what we know about this former teacher. So according to what we uncovered online, Wilson Jones was a respected figure in the Corinth School District. According to the district's official Facebook page, which has since deleted or privated their post, Jones was a cyber foundations and computer science and engineering teacher at Corinth Middle School, and it seems like he was known for his work in preparing students for careers in cybersecurity. And on his private Facebook page, he's featured in numerous photos with a young child, and he also has photos of himself with teacher banners on them that read, "Teachers change lives, proud to be a teacher." There's one post that still remained on the district's page that apparently features Wilson with other teachers who are all named in a faculty spotlight post recognizing them for their contributions to the school's fourth graders. And in June, he was selected to attend Mississippi State University's Gen Cyber Training Instructors to Prepare Security-Aware Students program. This is an immersive training held at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. The program aimed to equip educators with the skills to teach cybersecurity, a field of growing national importance. And Jones's classroom was even spotlighted on the school district's Facebook page, where he was praised for teaching students app creation using Code.org's App Lab. That post read, "Students brainstormed in groups to come up with ideas for their own apps," showcasing Jones' innovative teaching methods. And by all accounts, he was a rising star in the district until everything came crashing down. Now, Mike, you listen to this. You hear about his apparent respected reputation as a teacher, as an innovative teacher. How do you balance that? How do you reconcile that with now that public image and now the allegations that he's facing? I mean, this is a conversation I have with about so many teachers who are accused of wrongdoing.
You know, I think back to being taught a really simple principle that I think changed my way of thinking in a lot of these kinds of circumstances. Number one, think about incredibly talented coaches that end up getting in positions where they're doing things that are improper and end up being charged with crimes. Or think about people who, like a teacher who has a pedophilia challenge, going in and working in a schoolyard where he has that target that he actually pursues, and it's there and readily available. The comment that I was taught very young was that it's dangerous when our strengths become our weaknesses. And he was able to exploit what was truly a strength, it seems like. And perhaps with just one misaligned piece of judgment, got himself into trouble. Or it could have been that this was repetitive predatory behavior done in the cloak of darkness that took this long to uncover.
And I think that background in cybersecurity would hurt his case, right? This is somebody who is around this kind of material, somebody or around these kinds of programs would know how to do this. I think that it's, again, as chilling as it is to hear what he was teaching and what his specialization was, I think it also could hurt him from an investigative point of view and a prosecutorial point of view.
Exactly. In fact, it's putting the fox in the hen house and using their wisdom to get them there. That, again, that idea that strengths become our weaknesses, or that where much is given, there should be much more expected. I don't think it's going to help him that he has this kind of experience and expertise, especially in the area of cybersecurity, because he actually took advantage of that same kind of cyber environment.
What would you advise parents, kids, students, what would you advise them on how to protect themselves? Don't post on social media?
I don't think we're ever going to be able to stop any of us from posting on social media. And so in combination with what the government needs to do in the area of putting legislation in place, I think parents just have to be even more vigilant than ever before in discussing the pitfalls with the cyber world that we live in now. The parents need to, whether their kids like it or not, think about whether they're going to put restrictions on those mobile devices that limit what they can do. And whether the kids like it or not, that parents have a lack of democracy in the home, and they actually check the device to see if there's somebody that looks predatory on there or that they don't recognize, and calling that to the attention of people. And they got to engage with law enforcement and the school system, because those are the people in the trenches that can really help.
So Jones awaits his detention hearing on Friday, where prosecutors are expected to present the evidence gathered during the investigation, including the AI-generated videos, any additional material that was found on Jones' devices, which we don't know what that could be. And his defense team will likely argue that the videos were not intended to be pornographic, that they weren't morphed images, as he claimed during the school district's initial investigation, or at least that's what's been reported. But I will say, given the explicit nature of the content and the ages of the victims, maybe pretty much of a tough defense, to say the least. Now, the case of Wilson Jones, it is a chilling reminder of the dark side of technology, because you have this once celebrated educator now stands accused of exploiting the very students that he was trusted to teach. And as the legal process unfolds, the Corinth community, they are now left to grapple with this fallout, to ensure that such a breach of trust never happens again. And Corinth Chief of Police Landon Tucker is urging anybody with additional information about Mr. Jones' alleged misconduct to come forward. And if you have any information, you can call the Corinth Police Department number that you see on your screen right there. Mike King, thanks so much. Great seeing you. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Great to be with you, Jesse. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.